So, welcome to the podcast, Charlotte. It's so amazing to have you. I'm so excited for this conversation today. How are you?
Hiya, honey. Yes, I'm so excited. Honestly, I haven't recorded a podcast in what feels like forever. So I'm ready. I just feel like it's so in need of like a fulfilling chat, as someone who just aligns with you. So I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. I'm so excited to get into this. We're going to be talking about just like all things self-worth, all things just like our journeys. We've both been on like such different journeys, but I feel like we've gotten to such a similar space. And like being
Mm,
able to lead other women as well in feeling empowered in themselves. It's so, so good. Let's
mm.
start with a self-love ritual that you practice to show your self-love.
Yes, and I love this because I feel self-love when you go on your journey yourself, it starts off in such a way that's like bubble baths and have the chocolate if you want to have the chocolate and oh, let's go for a hot girl walk. And it's like, fuck that bullshit. Like that's not self-love. That's just like most of the time putting cotton wool around your emotions. And
Mm,
it's also another massively avoidant behavior, can I just say? Like a lot of these things people preach about self-love is actually quite avoidant behavior to just make ourselves feel better. And it's not actually addressing the root problem. So
mm.
two answers I wanted to give you, because I know this is just meant to be a little quick question at the start. The first one being date yourself. So this is a little bit of a cotton woolly one. Um, and it's scary at first. I was kind of forced into doing it. Like when I came back to my hometown, I decided I didn't want to associate with the people that I used to associate with growing up here. So I had to do things by myself. Otherwise, I'd just be stuck in my house all day. So date yourself, like coffee shops. I love taking myself out for a nice coffee. My bank account doesn't love it, but I don't care. Like I love it. And it just allows you to create space to sit with your emotions. It also allows you to be so fucking strong in holding yourself and backing yourself. And like, I will happily sit somewhere now and just be present. And I don't feel like I have to go on my phone to mask the fact that I'm alone or, be hidden behind my laptop screen. Most of the time I am because I go there to do business or whatever. But I can stand without my phone in my hand and just hold myself and be like, yeah, I'm by myself. Like, why the fuck wouldn't I be? I love being by myself. You
Mm.
should love that. So date yourself. That's the first one. And number two, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. I think boundaries are honestly the epitome of self-love. I don't know whether you want to dive into that, but having boundaries, embodying them, practicing them, and being integral to them
Mm.
would be my second answer.
Oh, that is so big. And I'm so glad you brought that in there. I first want to loop back to the dating yourself and sitting there at a cafe, drinking your coffee or your matcha or whatever you have, and actually just holding yourself in that and feeling good in being by yourself, not distracting yourself by social media, but just like being present. That is such a huge thing. And I guarantee that so many women who are listening right now are like, fuck, that sounds scary. Like, fuck, I can't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
How would you? I know for me, like that, it's baby steps. So yes, these things
Mm,
might seem like if you're at the start of your, self-worth journey, these things might sound like I would never be able to do that. I know for me, like that's what I say to my clients. I'm just like baby steps, like start with the little things. Maybe it's going on a hot girl walk alone, not dragging a friend along with
yeah,
you. What would
yeah.
be some tips that you would give to women who are like wanting to be that embodied in their like self-worth to go to a cafe on their own?
Yeah, you could say it one of two ways, I guess. So you could do the whole like baby steps, like 100%. And also, it's okay to act avoidant to a certain extent. Meet yourself where you're at. Like, if
Mm,
you're not ready to go do the thing yet, bring it back, meet yourself where you're at. So maybe like, I used to only go to cafes where I knew there wouldn't be people from school. Like,
mm,
even if that meant driving an extra distance, getting the train somewhere to a different city, like, obviously I wasn't getting the train like 3 hours away to go to a cafe, but I live in an area where it's accessible to do that. Um, go places where you know that it's just going to be strangers, because that's going to help you to not feel as this fear come up
mm,
in terms of people judging you, because you're like, fuck this, like I don't know anyone here. I
mm.
don't care. that's going to help you. So yeah, baby steps in every way, like that could be one. Or even start dating yourself at home. Like if it's not the fear of being seen by others, that's your fear, maybe it's the fear of actually just spending time alone. Start to date yourself at home without, let's say, like start without techie distractions like your phone or your laptop, but you could have a distraction that's like a book. You know, that's still a distraction. Like reading is great, but it's still a distraction if it's a fictional book. So I would 100% agree with you, baby steps.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because this is such a huge thing. We're so overstimulated all the time, right? And I know this has been something I've had to work on and continue to work on, is it's actually okay in silence. Like it's actually okay to be with yourself and not have to fill the gaps. You don't have to fill the gaps. Those gaps, when you have that peace and that quiet with yourself, maybe it is just going for a walk with no podcast in your ears. Maybe it is just sitting at home, just like sitting there, like simply sitting there, not putting music on, not putting a podcast on. Like those little pockets are where the growth actually happens, and you are able to actually find out who you are authentically. Because, you know, if we even get into like this authentic piece, right? Like a lot of the time people think that they're being their authentic self, but I also fucking guarantee that they're listening to podcasts constantly, taking on all their friends' opinions, taking on their co-workers' opinions. And if you actually stripped them of their job role, of their favorite workout, of their favorite food, of all these things, if you just stripped them to the core to just them, like they wouldn't know how to say like who they are authentically.
Yeah, it's fucking scary when, because people cling on to identities so much. I did it. There was a really good point you made there that I wanted to back up, and I literally can't remember what you were saying, which is why I interjected. Oh, that's so bad. Anyway, you go, carry on. Sorry.
I think I just said like when we strip everything back and we're just like left raw, who we are, it's so hard to just like know who we are, because like we have all these stories and all these things layered on top of us. But yeah, anyway, you got it?
I know where I was going to go. Yeah, it's here. So I think a really easy thing to do is literally just flipping the narrative sometimes. It's like in your head, you could be sat there thinking, oh, I hate being alone. Like I hate being by myself. I hate being bored. If you just flip the narrative, like even if you don't believe it yet, but you just say in your head, like, oh my God, I love this time. Like I love having the opportunity to spend time with myself, and then sit in silence. Like that does actually really help. And it sounds like shut the fuck up, but it really helps. Just flip the narrative. Like I think a lot of people, if you're listening to this podcast from a space of not yet being in kind of the self-development realm, a lot of people haven't heard that word narrative yet. I know I hadn't, and I think it's a word that's actually really powerful, because it's really brings a lot of self-awareness up, and you're like, yeah, a narrative, like, yeah, this is just a story I'm creating. Okay, which narratives am I playing into that just don't really fucking serve me at all? And the second little point I wanted to make was I once had someone say boredom is a luxury. And I think that's a really good narrative to play into, is like when you're bored, be like, oh my God, like my life is so luxurious that I have this little pocket of time in my day to be bored. That's insane. Like that's fucking cool.
Yeah, it is. It's so cool. And you know, in this conversation as well, I feel like a little like undertone here that we're sort of speaking into as well is that piece around kind of just people being addicted to victimhood. And I do want to preface that, of course, it's a trauma response in some people. If you have a lot of unresolved trauma stuck in your body, you haven't worked through things, of course, it's actually the way your brain works. I get that. And I'm not saying like, don't be a fucking victim, but I also just want to bring this up as well, because humans are addicted to being the victim. Like we connect on low frequencies, we connect by our problems, we create more problems, we overcomplicate things. And it's so much easier to say like, poor me, this is happening, than to actually stand in your self-worth and like, you know, looping it back, be that girl that's sitting at a cafe, holding her head high and not on her phone. It's so much easier not to do that. Because
it's really fucking lonely when you pull yourself out of victimhood. It is. And I think it just allows you to be lazy, if I'm honest. Like call yourself out, it's lazy. Like it's literally lazy behavior. And it also shows that you don't have much about you from a place of love. Like when I pulled myself out of victimhood, I was like, fuck, who am I? Like coming back to that identity piece that you were saying is like, I'd clung everything to my identity. When that identity came crashing and burning, which was the identity of being a professional dancer, which, you know, that comes with a fuck ton of external validation. When that came crumbling down, I clung onto that identity by playing victim to it and being like, well, the industry ruined me in this way, and my eating disorder was because of the industry, and blah 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 blah. And I was still trying to live my life through an identity that was no longer even me, through victimhood. And it was when I decided, okay, I'm going to come out of victimhood. That was the hardest time of my life because I didn't know what to talk to people about. I didn't know how to connect with people. I didn't know what to fucking, my ex-boyfriend, I had no clue what to talk about when we went on dates. No clue. I was like, oh, okay, so how's my week been? I don't know. Because it used to just be, oh, babe, I'm feeling fat. Like, oh, I've put on weight. Oh, my dance teacher said this, blah, 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 to seek the sympathy from him, which I defined as love in my head. And that's the sad thing, is it comes from a place of just seeking love.
Yeah. And when you take away all of the problems that you inject into your relationships, including with yourself, when you strip all that away, it really is, it's like you're standing there in the middle of a football field naked and everyone's staring at you. It's so vulnerable. Even if it is just with yourself that you begin this journey of like stripping it all back and facing yourself and actually being like, you're fucking playing into this shit, and like, why? And it's not as easy as like waking up one morning and just flicking the switch. Like, I do want everyone listening to understand that as well. It's not like you don't just get to this space of just feeling so good. It's a journey. Old things come up at every level, but equally it's like making that choice every day so that it then, because it's the power of choice, right? Like we can choose. It's easy to fall back into those vibrations of like whatever it might be, playing victim, being that identity that everyone else knows you as, even because like they're not growing. So you want to try and like stay on that level. But yeah, when you make that choice, it's just, it changes everything.
I think a really good, for the listeners who are kind of calling themselves out, going through that phase of being like, oh shit, like, yeah, I'm playing victim in like every area of my life. I know that was how I fell into it. I don't know about you, Tanika, but that was definitely me, was I was like, oh fuck. And it was a realization of like just calling myself out one day and actually realizing that that was me. I think a really good step to do is ask yourself, like, what am I scared of not being allowed to bring with me? So write a big list, like whether it be like family members, your current boyfriend. Like, I couldn't bring my ex with me. That relationship wasn't in alignment. Once I pulled myself out of victimhood, it meant ending a 4-year relationship. Like, that was hard. It was horrible. Friendships, hobbies, diet habits, all the things. Like, write down what it is that you are scared that you won't be able to bring with you, and then unpack that. Like, whether it be with your coach, whether it be just to yourself, whether it be just meditating on it and allowing the feelings to come up, like live it, be like, okay, how's it going to feel if this isn't allowed to be in my life anymore? Or how can I allow this to be in my life in a different way? So like, for example, family members, there are certain family members I have now that certain conversation topics are off limits, just because I know their mindset around it and I don't want to play into their narratives.
I love that. And that in itself is swinging back to that boundary piece, right? Of having those firm boundaries. And sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, boundaries are scary to put in place. It doesn't matter what level you're at. They're actually terrifying because you're asserting that new level that you're at, but you're also asserting your truth. You're standing in who you are. And it's like, it's not letting that into your vortex of like what other people are believing. So boundaries are huge. And that's been a huge thing that I had to really learn. I had no idea how to set boundaries, which a lot of us don't, because we're not shown boundaries. Even like, think back to your first job, for example, right? Like, you were probably like 14 years old, first weekend you wanted to take off. You were probably working at a fucking ice cream shop, go to take the weekend off, and then you're like told that you're not allowed to because whatever they're projecting onto you. You're trying to set a boundary there of like taking off one shift. You're instantly shut down by someone older than you. So, like, that's just one example. But even as children trying to say like, I don't want to do this, and then having to do the thing, like, we're conditioned not to set boundaries.
Yeah, I think a really good, like, it's just funny hearing you explain that because it's so true for everyone. And it's like, how fucking ridiculous. Like, life is so much bigger, and we're conditioned to have ourselves believe that life is about work and earning money and pleasing people and blah 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 blah, all the things. But unpacking that a little bit, like something big thing I do with my one-to-one clients, which, you know, I think makes it clearer on like being able to understand if it's your boundaries or if it's the voices in your head you've got from like podcasts and books, like you were saying earlier, Tanika, is you really need to get clear on your core values. And I do this through defining three clear words. So my core values for my life are passion, connection, and freedom. Freedom plays into like adventure and stuff like that. But obviously that is like, you need to go deeper on that. But that's an easy way to start, is like get clear on 3 words. And it's not even easy. It's actually really hard to get clear on those 3 words when you're coming from a place of being so disconnected with yourself. Get clear on those 3 words. And then every time you go to set a boundary, be like, does this align with my values? For example, for me, the freedom piece, that is one of my core values. If I'm then getting scared to not ask for time off at work, like you were saying, I can say, no, that's wrong, because it's not in alignment with my values. Therefore, I'm not going to be fulfilled. I'm not going to be happy, because I'm living in alignment with societal values, societal standards that actually aren't my own. And that, I think, makes it easier for people to dictate, like, okay, am I playing into societal norms, or am I playing into my own norms? And reconstruct in your head how you think your life is supposed to look through literally basing every single, you can do it with everything, and it's quite empowering and liberating. Like when you spend money, okay, does this align with my 3 words? Maybe it doesn't.
I love that. And something that I say to my clients with setting boundaries, because this is such a big thing, and when you've never set a boundary with someone, it is terrifying. But you know, the thing I always tell my clients is start setting boundaries with yourself. Like, where are you playing into leaky shit that you know isn't serving you, that is just like low frequency things? Like, I know for me, ages ago, it used to be like going on my phone as soon as I woke up, or it used to be like, I don't know, I can't even think of like the things, right? But like, there were just things that I knew didn't serve me. And they were small boundaries that I set in place. And that has now been able to compound into, I don't even want to go on my phone when I first wake up. Like, I'll do my meditation, have my little morning routine, and then I'll come back to it. And that's what I always say to my clients is start setting those boundaries even with yourself. Like, what are things that you shame yourself for every time you do it? You know it doesn't serve you. You know it doesn't feel good. It's habitual. Where can you like pull those things up and just ask yourself those questions that you just said, like, does this align with like my 3 values? No, it doesn't. Start shifting it.
And it's really scary, like you said, but it's like when you do it to those people, I think a really important thing that I kind of say to myself every day, which is quite comforting, is you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. Like, the right person will always stay. And a lot of challenges are coming up for me at the moment because I've just got into a new relationship, and it's amazing, but it's also fucking scary. Like, I can even feel emotion coming up right now. Like, it's terrifying, to be quite honest. Like, being this whole new person and having the title of a girlfriend, like, that's terrifying for me, because I've never done this before now. Like, how do I be a girlfriend in this new person that I am? And it was like one day I was like, I know that I really need alone time. Like, I just really do. And we were walking home and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to ask for it. And it would have been so much easier to just go home and just chill together and not say anything and please him, out of this space of being like, okay, well, I please them now, so I've got connection. And this is where the value thing can get a little bit distorted, because it's like, one of my core values is connection, but I still got to set this boundary. And that's why you need to like go a bit deeper with it. And connection to self is very important, obviously. But it's like, I said to him, I was like, and it was really quiet. It wasn't very assertive or strong. I was like, I just feel like I just need a little bit of alone time tonight. Like, is that okay? Like, asking if it was okay. It's like, yeah, of course it is. And there was no like reaction. There was no like, it was calm. It was like, yeah, of course it is. Like, and that's a really strong word as well. I think a really strong phrase to use is of course. Like, of course, Eddie. Yeah. So what? And you use that with yourself. It's like, I should have been like, of course I deserve alone time. Of course my relationship's going to be fine if I ask for that. Of course there's not going to be an argument if I ask for that. And do it with little habits, like you were saying, Tanika. I think, you know, that flipping the narrative piece. For example, your phone. Like, of course I didn't go on my phone in the morning. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, of course I go to the gym 5 times a week. Of course I eat vegetables every day. Whatever it is. Like, they're very stereotypical ones. Take them or leave them. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I love your little like example that you had there. That's just again, right? You can do this work, you can be so self-aware in this, but it's still, things still come up. Like you're learning to be that new version of yourself. You're learning each and every day to be more and more expanded in who you are. And you don't get to this stage where it's just like, oh my gosh, it's done. Like I'm fucking healed. Like it's over. It's not like that at all. It's just deeper and deeper stuff. But I think you get to a space of acceptance. And I think that's what's really powerful in that journey to connecting to self and to feeling worthy, is you get to that space of just being like, okay, like this might still come up for me. This might still come up for me. I've got to work on this. But equally, like this is just who I fucking am, and I accept it.
Yeah, there is. Oh my God. One of my friends said this and it just came up for me then when you was chatting. And it's like, for me now, I see self-development as a hobby. It's one of my favorite fucking hobbies. I find it so fun, and I'm sure you're the same. Like once you get into it, you're like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like, let me learn more about myself. And sometimes it's not fun, but like that's all a part of it. But one of my friends once said to me, and I don't know if she like got this from a book or if she just made it up herself. She was like, learning about yourself should be your favorite hobby. And I was like, yeah, it should. And we're not taught that, especially not like, I think Aussie culture is that's where you grew up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Aussie culture is pretty similar to, I'm from the UK, to British culture, in the sense that it's like, don't be seen as arrogant, like be quiet, like dim yourself down, dim your light, like don't shout, like tall poppy syndrome, whatever.
Yeah, that's
Very big.
Yeah.
Yeah, like big crossover in our cultures. And we're taught to constantly like not value ourselves. And it's like, no, it's like, shut up. Like, we should be more like the Americans, and probably even they don't do it to the fullest extent that they should. But it's like, why can't we be arrogant? Why can't we be obnoxious in the right, healthy way of like, learning about yourself should come first. You should come first. And I feel like the only place in life, and I've tried to think about this, and if you've got one, like tell me, that comes to mind. The only place in life I can think where we're told to put ourselves first is the like airplane thing. Put your oxygen mask on first.
Literally. Oh my gosh. You're so right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I can't think of any other aspect in life where it's like you should put yourself first.
neither.
Yeah.
We're getting conditioned to actually put others first and like people please and not live in alignment with who we are. Yeah, it's ridiculous, like the conditioning here. And I wanted to just add something. It just came up when you were speaking about how we're taught not to be, you know, arrogant, or we're like, all these emotions and all these things are demonized, when actually it's actually all should be welcome, because how are you supposed to know what good is without feeling the bad or expressing that, right? But one of my friends, like a couple of months ago, she's really into connecting people to like self-love, and she really works with like just the frequency of love. And she one day looked up the definition of self-love, and it literally was coming up with what are those people called? Narcissist. It was like the definition of self-love is a narcissist. And it's like, we are actually like conditioned to the point of like, you look up the definition of someone who loves themselves and you're told that you're a narcissist. And it's like,
oh my God. This is why I love your question at the start, is because it's like, we need to reconstruct this narrative of like what self-love is. Like, it is such a toxic word, if I'm quite honest. Like, it's become quite a toxic phrase. Even now you see it like self-love, like letting people swing the other way with their food. And I'm sorry if this triggers you, but like, we're taught, like, you see these models on Instagram that are unhealthily obese, and it's self-love, and it's like, that is not self-love. Like, they're gonna die sooner. Like, I'm sorry, but like health-wise, like biologically, that is not self-love. And I think there's a point of like, if you've got to that stage, like there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of shit there, and I 100% get that. And it's like, love yourself where you're at, meet yourself where you're at, whilst having the goal of moving forward. But it's just blows my mind how self-love has become such a toxic word in society, and how it makes you stray so far from your authentic self. Like, I have, even like you said with the thing of like it's addictive and we just go deeper, I thought I'd found my authentic self, and now I'm going deeper and deeper, and things are coming up that I'd forgotten about. Like, I just had a little kind of rebrand of being like harsh and potent and direct, and they're like my 3 little like things that I have in my Instagram bio. And everything's always said from a place of love because I'm a very loving person. But I was thinking back to my younger self, and I was like, oh my goodness, I remember always being told, like, if my parents had heard me speak to my friends, and I had like really close friendship group when I was little, like lots of friends, really close friends, never struggled with that. They were like my sisters, like we had such a special bond, and I was fucking harsh with them and fucking like direct, and they were with me as well, and we were very like no bullshit girls, like just call each other out, like very direct. We weren't ever like these pretty little like, oh, like scared to say something. Like, no, we were always like so outspoken. And then I always used to watch people's content, like Jessie Williams, if you're in the self-development space, like Jessie Williams, Felicity Morgan, like they're probably the main 2. They're big fucking players in this space, so you probably have heard of them, but their content is very like forthright, and it used to trigger me. And as soon as I like rediscovered this part of myself about being harsh and direct, and then the next time I saw one of their Instagram posts came up that was pretty harsh, and I was like, oh my fucking god, this is why it used to trigger me.
I just want to butt in there and say, like, I have like just recently refollowed Jessie. I had her like, I followed her for years, and then I was getting triggered, and I just couldn't at that stage. It was such a big shadow for me. I was just like, I can't fucking look at your content right now. Like, you're so out of like alignment, like completely projecting. Knew I was at the time, but couldn't see what the shadow was. And then like I've just recently remembered, oh my god, I love following them. And they're like, they're just so embodied in like being direct and being just outspoken, and they're so okay with people not agreeing. And I think that's like so cool, because we're again conditioned to like fit in, like we want to like fit into the crowd. And I really resonate with you in being like the direct friend. Like, I growing up, I've just always been like, people have always been like, oh my god, you're so intense, you're so direct, and I've always been like, my heart's like so big, I didn't know I was coming across that way. And I kind of like pushed that part of me down for like quite a long time, because I was like, I don't want to come across like I'm super direct, I don't want to come across in that way. But rediscovering that in myself and seeing that, like, what's fucking wrong with being honest? Like, someone tell me.
Please. I'm struggling.
But in that, right, like being that like direct person and actually just speaking your truth. Yeah, some people don't agree, but like swinging back to what you said before, like it's the same as setting a boundary. If you're setting a boundary with the like wrong person, they're not going to stay around. Like, it's that simple. And you don't, you might grieve about it for a little bit if someone doesn't agree with what you're saying, but at the end of the day, they're not around for your expansion. They're probably just hanging around because they can get something out of you when you don't have a boundary there.
Yeah, and it's like just actually look at that and investigate that. Like, I don't want to brush over that. That's such a good point. Like, what are they getting out of that? Because, for example, using the harsh and direct piece, like when your parents are telling you to not do that, they're getting a fucking easy life out of it. Like, you're not challenging them. I was the kid that was like, but why? Like, why? All the time. Like, and that's from a place of love, like that's a very, very easy example to give. That's not that deep. But look at where they're benefiting from it. And I think something that helped me connect, which it didn't help me connect that deep, because this exercise didn't allow me to pull on like the harsh part and the direct part of what we're saying here. But I used to like look at pictures of myself from when I was a kid and be like, okay, what do I not do anymore? And there's this one picture where I'm like dancing, like bright pink sparkly top, there's like a dog in the picture, I'm like singing into my hairbrush, and it was like, I was like, okay, what can I get from this? Like expressive, like colors. Like I didn't have, I mean, I'm saying this with a white fucking jumper on, but I didn't have any color in my wardrobe. And like, I don't know, like just look at pictures of yourself as a kid and be like, what parts of myself did I stop loving because I was told they were wrong? And this is the thing with our like directness, is like, I love being friends with direct people now. I'm like, yeah, have an opinion, tell me I'm wrong. And like my boyfriend, like I'm like, tell me I'm wrong. I want you to like challenge me. All the people close to me in my life, I want them to do that, so why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and words in society were made to believe they're wrong, and it's if you rephrase them. I now think that being direct and calling people out is one of my superpowers. And like, I have noticed since acknowledging that that's a very big part of me, like my conversations with my clients have gone through the roof, because I will happily say things to them like, you're being fucking judgy, or you're being fucking lazy, or like, whereas before I'd think it in my head, I wouldn't say it. It's like, what's the point? Like, they're literally paying me to say this stuff. So I think just reconstructing in your head how these words that you've been made to believe are negative could actually be your superpowers. And that's why people don't like them as well, is yes, one, because they benefit from you not having those superpowers, but two, it probably fucking scares them, because you're probably like, I think for me, like when I used to be so direct and so opinionated and okay with what I was saying as a kid, I think it scared like certain family members, because they couldn't do any of that, and they still can't to this day. So I think they're like, okay, one, what's she gonna say about me? Like, I don't want to be called out. They're like, I don't want to be called out on my truths. And it's like, that should work two ways, like call me out as well. But they wouldn't want to do it, so they don't want to hear it back, type thing.
Yeah, it's like, well, as children, we're like those mirrors. So of course, the parts that like our caregivers don't accept in themselves, they're going to shut down in us. And I loved that point of view, going back on like old photos and actually like studying yourself as a child and being like, what the fuck did she like? Like, what was she doing? How was she like showing herself? And you can still feel the energy in photos, right? Like you can tune into that and be like, oh, she was feeling like really good. Like 5-year-old me slays. Like tune into that and then bring that into your life. I love that so much. And something that I just wanted to touch on is when we're just speaking about emotions, for example, and people are like, like that good girl archetype is like such a thing of just like always like be happy and like don't be angry and like don't be sad and like whatever. Like when you actually get up the chart of like emotions on a frequency scale, and I bring this into my work with my clients, it's like they're actually all emotions. Like they actually have one thing in common. They're all emotions, which means that they are equal. There's nothing wrong with any of them. It's your relationship to them. It's the story that you have placed on each emotion, right? So if being that like version of you that is a little bit more like direct and like what what emotion are you presenting behind that directness? Like look at your relationship with the actual emotion, because you were probably told as a child, like being, like I can't even think of an emotion, but like maybe being just like expressing that you were upset, for example, maybe that was just like always shut down. So then you just think like being sad is just like there's something so completely fucking wrong with you, but it's actually your relationship to that. Because if we don't feel those emotions, we're never going to feel like super fulfilled in our life.
Yeah, I love that. And that is so true. And I can't really touch on like the frequency stuff because I'm so interested in that, but it's not my area of genius, so I won't contribute in that sense. But I think something where I can contribute is like, it is so true, and it comes back to that narrative piece of like, I think there was a time in my life where I was quote unquote direct because I was angry. So that was why I was doing it. Like the anger was coming out as, I'm just gonna fucking tell them, and I don't fucking care who like burns down on the way. And it was a very, very toxic version of myself from the ages of like, I don't know, maybe 14 to 17, where I was just this like ballsy bitch who didn't give a fuck who she hurt or what she said. And that was like, okay, that wasn't a good form of being direct. Like, what I'm intrigued, like I know it's your podcast, but like I know I'm the guest. What would you say to that? Like, do I still get to be like, okay, directness is my authenticity, or do I get to be like, what comes up for you when I say that?
No,
I'm so intrigued.
when you were speaking into that, like I actually instantly relate to that, because it's like, it's when it's a shadow, and when you aren't completely accepting in yourself that you're direct, of course it's going to come out in these ways that aren't actually aligned with your authenticity. And I
Mm.
have actually been through that myself as well, that directness piece, like swinging the pendulum the other way, and like channeling it in a way where it's like more harmful than good, because I feel like it actually comes back to that space of not being seen or accepted, and actually being judged in the
Mm.
directness. So you swing it the other way so that people,
Okay.
I guess,
Yeah.
have fear to even say she's direct, because you're being so fucking direct with such heavy
Yeah.
emotion behind it that they're never going to like judge you to your face about it. So it's so much easier. And I know
Yeah.
I have been on that journey myself with that.
Okay. Yeah. I love that answer. Thank
Mm.
you. Thank
And like,
you.
for anyone listening as well, like recognize that in yourself as well. What are some things that, it might be anger that you know that you outburst in certain situations, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, why do I do that? Like, it just doesn't even, like, I'm doing this because you know that there's like an ulterior motive behind it, but you don't quite know. Go back to the start of this episode, listen to, this, how to set boundaries, the self-love, all the things, like how to actually sit with yourself, and you'll be good. Because I feel like it's just that awareness, and it's the choice that you make. It's the dedication to your journey as well, because like I said, like we've both said, it doesn't just happen. Like, you don't just wake up like someone who's like completely like emotionally intelligent and understands like all these things. It's a journey.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to this sitting with yourself thing. And what just came up for me then was something really good for the audience to ask themselves if they're scared of like alone time sitting with themselves is, one, are you scared of sitting with yourself because you don't know yourself or because you don't like yourself? And like decipher like, okay, which is the problem? Because then moving forward from that is going to be two very different solutions and way to work through it. And that's a really big thing. Like, it is like trying to drive somewhere in the dark without your headlights on, without your sat nav on. Like, if you're just trying to enjoy time alone but you don't actually know the root cause of like, do I not know myself or do I not like myself, you just aiming for a target that you can't even see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is such a good point. Like, that is so big. And I love that you brought that in, because it can be those two things, right? And it can get confusing if you don't have that clarity in that question that you just asked. So everyone listening, like, fucking put that in your notes, like come back to that, because that's huge. And so many people do use that excuse of just like, I can't sit like with myself. I'm like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. But it's like, you're just telling yourself that every time you say the word but, it's a story. It's an excuse.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
every single fucking time. Like I actually ask you, like, sit down right now and like write like every but that you use, and it's gonna be an excuse. It's gonna be your ego like dropping in.
100%.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I think there's also like what strength in that is having the courage. And I think, again, like bringing relationships into it, because they are the biggest challenge, is something that I keep pulling myself up on in my new relationship is the little white lies. Like, how often do you tell those tiny little white lies that, like, I don't know, if you don't, I'm trying to think of an example and I really cannot think of an example right now. But let's say, for example, going back to spending time alone. The other night, I just wanted to chill. Like, I was so exhausted. I've just come home from Greece. I had like 3 days of traveling and seeing family members that I've not seen. It was a lot of social, a lot of energy output. I was shattered. And I just, honestly, all I wanted to do was fucking chill on the sofa and watch a movie. That was it. I didn't want to reply to people. I didn't want to be conscious in my time. I just wanted to fucking watch a film. And my boyfriend was like, why aren't you texting me back? Or like, it was very much a case of that I had to pause the movie for some reason. We were trying to watch it together, blah blah blah. And that was me not setting a strong boundary. And he was like, what's up? And I was like, nothing. He was like, no, what's wrong? And I was just saying nothing. So I was like, I'm so fucking tired. This isn't a big deal. Like, I cannot be asked. But like, you know, when you're just being blunt and aggy because like it's my own fault. Like, I didn't set that boundary of I don't want to reply to you. Like, I'll call you at the end of the day. I just need time to not think. I should have set that boundary. And it was this little white lie of like, no, nothing's wrong. Like, no, I'm just tired. No, I'm just this. I should have just been like, babe, like I don't want to text you right now. Like I just want alone time. And it's like those little white lies. That was not the best example of where I've done this, but it's all I can think of right now. Those tiny little white lies, like where are you telling them? For example, if me and Tanika say I woke up and I was really tired and I just did not feel like a podcast interview this morning, instead of saying to Tanika like, oh, I've got technical faults, blah 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 blah, just being like, babe, like honestly, I don't think this is 100% aligned for me to do this morning. I'm not going to be able to show up as my best self. That isn't this society. This is a better example. I can roll with this now. Society would see that as like, you know, we feel like we can't say that because society tells us like that's lazy. Like you need to show up for work. You need to be on time. You need to not let other people down. And it's all these things. So then we tell the white lies, and that playing into what I can about frequency, like that plays into the low frequencies of guilt and shame. And whereas if I just tell my 100% authentic truth, I'm sure you'd be like, okay, yeah, I totally get that. Like it might be a little bit annoying for you, but I'm sure you'd be like, okay, yeah, because people actually react well when you just are 100% honest with them. And it's fucking scary, but I think to start calling yourself out on white lies in your relationship is a really, really fucking big one. And it's one that actually creates such a deeper connection when you just tell the truth, even with the tiny things. It's really empowering, and it also is empowering for yourself in your relationships because you take away that like feeling of not having freedom. And if there's any men listening, like freedom's one of my core values. I'm an Aquarius, it's a big deal in my life. But if there's any men listening, obviously for men, like they need their freedom. It's one of every man's core values. And I think a really key player in keeping this freedom with your potential partners and with your friends is just being honest. Like just asking for what you fucking need. And you'll keep that freedom more and you won't feel as trapped in your relationships.
Oh, that one as well, like that feeling of trapped, right? Like so many people get into these spaces where they feel like, how did I get to this space? And it usually is from an accumulated amount of white lies. And white lies are the little things when someone, like, think about how like surface level just life is, right? Like, how are you? I'm good. How was your day? It was good. Like that's a white lie in itself if you want to, you know, get deep about it. So I love that you brought that in as well, because that ripples into friendships. It's not just like your intimate, you know, your partner. That's like friendships as well. I know I've had so many friendships where I've made friends with, you know, a new person, and I've always been the friend, like I've always just had that standard of like, don't fucking lie to me. Like if you're tired and you don't want to catch up, or you're tired and you don't want to catch up, let's reschedule. Like I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't want to hear the buts. Like I've just always been like that. And it's really interesting if I do like bring in a new friend to my proximity and how they're just like, oh my God, you're actually okay if we reschedule? Like it's actually okay. And I'm like, babe, like I would fucking hate for you to be here and not want to be here. Like, are you kidding me?
And that, it's a big self-worth and self-love piece, isn't it? Like you're not triggered by that because you're so fucking grounded in who you are and your connection to self. And old me, if a friend said that to me, I'd be like, fuck, like they don't like me, like, oh my God, I'm boring, they don't like hanging out with me, playing into all the things. Whereas now if someone said that to me, I'd be like, oh, I fucking love my friendships. Like we got to spend conscious, connected, I actually really don't like the word conscious, but whatever word you want to use, like we get to spend properly connected, deep time with each other because we're honest. And like don't make it about you. Like if someone's coming out at you with honesty, like it's about them. Like they care about you. And I think that's another time when you conform. And when I say relationships, I mean all the things, family, friends, whatever. That's when you can form deeper relationships and connections, is when you don't make the projection about you or make the truth about you. It's just a fucking truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that point so much. This has been such a fucking incredible conversation. Like all things like conditioning, we weren't sure where this was going to go. We were just like, let's jump on and chat. And this has been so good. I'm like, I love this so much. Like we just definitely have to do this again. I would love, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up this episode? Any tips or anything that you would like, you haven't mentioned yet for the audience?
I think just go back to that question, like really get to know yourself and be like, okay, what's the problem here? Do I not like myself or do I not know myself? Get really clear on that.
Yeah, I love that so much.
I got one more as well. Sorry.
Yeah,
This is me. I will just keep going. I think the biggest piece, because when I felt super lost, and I feel like we've leaned into that quite a bit in this journey, is like the phase where you feel a little bit lost and lonely. When I was in that stage, just getting really clear on those like values, and it's gonna take fucking ages. Like for me, I would say it took like 2-3 years to get really clear on, and even now it goes deeper and deeper, like we said. But once you get clear on those authentic core values and not ones that you're just taking from other people, that's when you can create a fulfilling life, because you can just start to question every single aspect of your life. Is it in alignment with my values? And that's what will create fulfillment and happiness.
I love that so much, so much. Everyone's going to like finish listening to this episode with so much wisdom to move forward and feeling so worthy, which is so slay, because at the end of the year, don't fucking use it as an excuse. I said that in last week's episode. Like we have 3 more months to like get into like gear. Don't use it as an excuse. So allow this to be your motivation. Can you please let everyone know where they can find you, how they can work with you?
Yes, of course. So Instagram, just head over to my Instagram. It's at Charlotte Elizabeth G. And currently I have a masterclass, which I don't know when this podcast will be out. The live masterclass will be on the 15th of October, which is a Sunday at 4 p.m. British time. But I will also be selling this as a recording. So it'll be on my link tree somewhere. That's called It's Not Your Body. And it's all about how people with body image issues, you know, that's kind of my background, like eating disorders, stuff like that. You don't have to have that, but like if you've got a self-worth issue, this will also be a very, very valuable class for you to come to. It's going to be talking into all things self-worth and how we disguise and mask our self-worth issues through things like body image and external things. And then that is going to funnel into a big course which will be launching soon, so go and follow me and you'll see all of the launch for that. But you can also work with me one-to-one. Inquiry link is again on my link tree in my Instagram bio, or if you just want to send me a DM, have a chat, see if I'm the right fit for you, and feel free.
Amazing. So this podcast will be up before your masterclass, so if you're listening to this, fucking jump in there. I'm sure it will be incredible. You have so much, like your Instagram, yeah, we didn't even get into like, this was surface level, guys. This was surface level in itself. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. I'll be back in your ears next Thursday at 5:55 a.m. Bye.